is Clem from Ask Clem Today How-Tos. In this video, I'm going to show you how to properly solder the wire onto an LED strip. Now, if you're wanting to know about the power supplies and the right voltage and how to calculate the footage for your job that you're doing, there is another video that you can check out at the end of this video about power supplies. So make sure you check it out. So in order to wire your LEDs, we're going to go ahead and give you some basic training on this here. First of all, the wire that I love using for an LED is a 22 gauge, and you will see it here on the wire that is written that'll tell you that's 22, or when you go to the store or go to a specialty store like an audio department. The wire is important that you select. I love using 22 gauge wire for my LED jobs. The reason why is because it's not as stiff, it's a little bit flexible, and it won't tear your LED. And the wire can't tear your LED even if it's a good quality LED. So there are cheap LEDs and there are good quality LED strips. So let me show you this. Now on the wire, you'll see that it'll have your numbers that says 22 gauge. Now one of the tools that you will need is this wire stripper. Now there are different color handles. One's yellow, one's blue, you got the red one. The red one is ideal for your low voltage LEDs that I've experienced that this is the one to go. You want to go ahead and kind of like pinch it just a tiny bit. Don't go all the way down, and then use your finger as a fulcrum, and you see how that slid, and boom, and there you go. You got your 4 wires there available. Now once you strip it, you're gonna have 4 color wires: black, white, red, and green. The black kind of will be the blue color for RGB, red, green, blue, and then the white is gonna be your power, so remember that. Let's go ahead and cut a little bit shorter. Now we're going to go ahead and strip our wires. Now this is a 22 gauge, and on here your 22, it's about the third one. So what I do is I only want a tiny bit. Actually, I'm going to use the second one. Well, I only want that tiny bit. I think you can see it there. You know, it's probably 1/8 of an inch. Don't want anything more than that. A lot of people will probably do 1/4 of an inch or even longer. And this is the reason why I only want a tiny bit. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, you can see that. It's just a tiny bit done. Let me see, would this help? It's only a tiny bit that I strip off. One of the things that I've come to realize is that you don't want wire touching wire, and obviously that's bad news. And by doing a tiny bit will prevent from doing that. Now that we have the wire cut, let's show you the LEDs. Not all of them have it, but if you look at this, there is a tiny picture of a scissors right there. And so at every section, that means you can cut the LED there. You don't want to cut it here because that'll mess up this thing. So you cut it right where that line's at. Like here, there's a line, and there's enough. So what you want to do is, you can either, this here has a cutters at the very end. So what you want to do is you go here and just cut it. Boom. So now I have that copper right there, and I also have copper for this side. So I have copper for both sides to solder in order to make it work. So that's what's so cool. So if you buy LEDs and you only need, let's say the average come in 16 feet, and you only need maybe 2 feet to do a section, or maybe you're going around the corner, or maybe you're going to another section, well, that's how you do this. You cut it to fit the size. So now let's say you're going to a section like this, but then your cut line is here, then you kind of like equal out your LEDs. Or let's say if it's just a tiny bit over, and you can actually fold this under to make it fit. So there's a lot of techniques that you can do. But today we want to show you how to properly solder this. So now, but I wanted to show you too that, for example, this LED has 3 diodes. Then you have this guy. He has 6 before the cut line. And look at how spread apart they are. So you got more LEDs on this one. Now I'm going to show you another one to show you how close those LEDs are. Now this one has 6, but you can see how close they are compared to this guy. Look at the difference there in the spacing of LEDs. So you can actually cut that there. So one's obviously more brighter than the other. And this happens to be a 24 volt. Here's another thing, the reason why we want to solder to the LEDs. See how nice and neat that looks there? Now you can have a connection, and this connection, yeah, it's great, but it can be bulky and it's hard to shove it down a wall, drill a hole, and sometimes you may have to drill a bigger hole instead of just drilling a small hole. And sometimes if you use butt splices, look how big that splice is and all that. So sometimes having the length wire solder right to the LEDs will give you a nice connection. So we are going to show you how to solder a RGB, which is red, green, blue, and the power. And then we're also going to show you how to solder a just a white LED that has just the power, the negative and positive. Okay, so but we will also show you sometimes LEDs have this plastic jacket on there. They call it waterproof. It's not waterproof. Some of them are just a jacket, a sleeve. They call those waterproof, and they're not. Some of them, they're called dustproof. So in reality, this might be waterproof. You dunk it in, it's going to mess up because the back is exposed. So you got to have one that's totally concealed to make it a true waterproof. But this jacket, it's nice if you like it. You know, overall, this is my go-to. You can do so many things. You can actually, even if you got to go a 90-degree turn real carefully, you bend it, and there's my 90-degree turn. Notice where I bent it, right where the solder and cut lines are. There's no little resistor. The resistor is where you got to be careful because that resistor is so sensitive and it can break, and then before you know it, you'll lose color in that strip only. So, but with this, it's pretty difficult to do a 90 degrees. There is tricks. So I'm going to show you a way right now and how, if you have a strip of LEDs that has a jacket, which is like a rubberized, and how to get access to that in order to solder. So you're going to need one of these knives. Make sure it's sharp. So it's at the end. I do have some copper there. So what I want to do is kind of like go back a little bit and then score it a little bit. You don't want to cut all the way through because you don't want to cut that the copper area. Once I score it, now with your fingers, just kind of like peel it. Okay, so here's my little plastic that I just cut off, and now I just exposed the soldering portion of it so I can do my wires. And once you're done, just take some clear silicone. It depends on where you're going to have it, if it's outdoors or what have you. And then put some silicone after you solder the wires in order to give it that protection. You know, they say these things last, 5-10 years, and it's true. I have LEDs here that's going on for 12 years in my house, still going on. But, it is man-made, so eventually it will go bad. Before I show you how to do the solder here, I want to tell you the importance about your soldering tool. This particular one is from Radio Shack, and it's a 40-watt soldering iron. But what's important in addition to that is what's here in the description. You must get the one that says here 40 watts, 120 volts, which obviously you connected to here in the USA, 60 hertz that you're looking for. This particular iron, it heats up fast, and as you can see, the tip is nice and pointy, because it heats up fast and also hot, that tip eventually will wear down to a little bit blunt. So every so often you got to sand it or buy more tips. But this has been my go-to. If you don't get the proper solder, you will damage the end of the LEDs, that all of a sudden you won't be able to solder in that place because the heat is not too hot enough. And then the solder that I use is not that thick. This is the solder that I use. This solder here, it's a 0.32, which is a 60-40 rosin core solder, and only 2.5 ounces. So you can see how thin it is. You don't need the real thick one. This has done so much better for me. So now that we have the supplies out of the way, and Radio Shack, they're about like 12 bucks for this solder. I'll buy like 2 or 3 at a time and keep some extra, so you can see I have that extra, and I have about 3 others that I have around. So what I'm going to show you here is how to solder this LED here, and then I will also show you how to do this is the RGB and that's the white. So I've been having my solder on for a while, so it's nice and hot. Definitely don't want to grab this point. You want to make sure that this piece that's replaceable, as you can see the screw there, is nice and tight, which I did beforehand. And this is what I'm talking about, how the tip is not blunt anymore. But that's okay. You don't want to touch that, because that is hot. So we're going to set this to the side here. So now, the one thing that we want to do is and when it comes to the rosin, I don't use that, like the dipping one, because this already has it, and there's no need if you do it the way that I show you. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of solder to the tip. And now the first thing I want to do is go ahead and add solder to each ball. And the thing is, once you get in there, a lot of people are scared of doing this part, and that could damage and so forth. Don't be scared. You're not gonna, if you stay on it, you're not gonna mess it up a whole lot because of having this solder, because you won't stay on it too long. Now notice I'm doing it on this table. It's I can go ahead and solder on this table. This is all porcelain cement. But if you were doing it on a countertop of wood, and even if I was doing it in a client's house, I would use where the LEDs come in, like this metal plate, and I lay it down first in order to protect the client's place. But this is my place. I feel comfortable. I'm not going to damage this tile. So what I want to do is go ahead and I'm going to stay on here. I'm heating it up. And as I heat it up, I'm just going to feed the solder until it creates a little ball. Okay, see how quick that was? It created a little ball there. So now, and you're saying, man, that's so close to each other. Yeah, it is, and that's the reason why I'm teaching you and how this can be done with no problem. So now I'm going to go ahead and heat up the second one. Create a little ball, just feed it. And it's almost like, have you ever seen a raindrop and it bubbles, especially on your car, if you have wax on it, it'll bubble out? Well, the same is true. So there you go. It was that easy. Now that you've created that part, now remember the wire that we only cut a tiny bit? So I'm going to give it a little bit of this wire. Wish I had my third hand. But if you do this, so remember we only cut a tiny bit? Well, and this is the reason why. We're going to go ahead and solder this part. Just put a little solder there. A little solder there. And a little solder there. So we got a little bit solder in each one. Now, guys, I can get rid of my solder, put it to the side. So now, just want to show you, the LEDs have, let me use this as a pointer. Right here, it has letters. It has GRB for green, red, blue, and then it has the little plus sign. It says 12. So you're able to tell how much power you need. Is it 24 volt or is it 12 volt? This is a 12 volt that you're gonna need. And then those are the colors where you put your green, your red, your blue. But always double check after you're done, because sometimes they will not line up these letters according to the color that your diode is. I've seen it many times happen, so that's why it's important to always test it. So now, and I'll show you how to test that in a minute. But we have these wires, so remember, white will always be power. And then, so the best thing to do is you can go ahead and hook up the two that are for sure, the green and the red, if you want to start those first. So all I do is I take my LED and I take my green and just lay it right on top of the solder. And then with this, since it heats up quick, it's a matter of a quick touch. Go like this and then let go, and you'll see the color of the solder change. It's already done. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the red right on top of the solder and let go. Boom, it's done. You'll see the color change. That means you're good. Now, remember that we don't have a blue wire, but we have black. So the black, or B, will be our blue wire. So now I'm going to put that right on top. As you can see, I'm putting this right on top like that. Once it's on top, I'm just going to hit it. And then boom, you'll see it change colors. So now the last one I'm doing is my power. I know white. Boom, it's done. And that's how you do solder your LEDs. It'll look from the manufacturer, and what's nice is that you don't have wire touching other wire. Now, how do we test it? Well, we'll do that in a second, because now I want to show you how to do the white. Because the one thing that I didn't show you, because this is my scrap LEDs, I don't have the sticky part, and you notice I was struggling moving it around, but now I'm going to go ahead and do this. So we're going to go ahead and cut this right here. Remember where the cut line's at? I don't want to do it there because that's from the manufacturer. There was a splice there. And so I'm going to cut it right there. So I can still use this in the future because I have copper there. So now what I normally do, I peel this just a little bit. Anything that'll stick. Boom, now that's not moving on me. And then I'm going to take this guy. Again, heat up the copper and then feed my solder, heat up the copper and feed the solder. So now, see the two little beads that you got on there? That's all it takes, those two little beads. And then that will be able to solder the wire. So I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to unplug my solder. So now how do we test this? All right, now we're going to go ahead and test it. And here's the power supply that we talked about in the other video, and how to select the power supply and the formula to figure out how many what's the watts that you need to select. This is 100 watts, and I already showed in the other video how to connect this, so go check out the other video if you want to learn. And then you got these other two, which is for my low voltage, the minus and the plus. So let's go ahead, and this is with the ground wire. So before I plug this in to test my LEDs to make sure that my wire is connected correctly, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit of wire from here. And remember, I'm gonna go ahead and strip this off because I need to touch the wire. I'm gonna crimp it a little bit, just enough to not to damage the wires. And then I'm gonna go ahead this time, I'm gonna strip off a little bit more, you know, because it's just, I'm not gonna be plugging this anywhere, so I can cut a good 1/2 inch of wire right off of it. And don't forget to twist. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing. Now, when you're doing this other end, make sure you twist whenever you have short wire, because whenever you strip wire and you do this and pull, it could pull the wire straight out. So again, I'm going to pull a little bit longer. Doesn't have to really tiny. The tiny bit is only when you're going to solder. That's the trick of having a good solder. So now we got this little strip. Now, because we only need 2 wires and there's 4, this is what I do. Red and white is in low voltage is always power. So I'm going to put these 2 guys together. And then the green and blue or black, like we see, together. So now that created a thicker gauge for me. So I'm going to go ahead, simply because we don't need these 4 wires, but why put it to waste? So now I'm going to take my Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to loosen the negative and the positive. And then in the negative, I am going to put the black and green wire. Always there, black and green goes in the negative. And make sure it's snug. And then in the positive, it's either red or white that goes in there. So that's why we stay consistent when we add these wires together, so we know that they're power. So now it's snug. So there's my testing wire. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Let me put it this way. All right, so we know when we have power when that little green light comes on, but make sure these are separated. So now there's power. Now that we have this, there's my LED. Now remember, white is power. So we take right, separate it, and then we take this red and power. We can actually hook it up together. So there's my power. But now to test the other ones, let's see here. Put it there. So then we go like this. So now we know that our red is soldered correctly. Then we know our green is soldered correctly. And our blue. So that's how you test to make sure it's lit up correctly. So now we're going to test the white one, which comes from the manufacturer. You can see it's a little bead, little small bead round. So that's what I try to emulate. There's no wires sticking out. So let's go ahead and test this out. So there's your black, black to black, and your white. Boom. There's your LEDs. So that's how we test our LEDs. Now, if you enjoyed this video, that's great. If you want to learn how to use the proper power supply for your LEDs, then check this video out. That's right here. And then this video will give you some basic information and on the formula and how to calculate what's the correct wattage for your power supply that you're going to need, because that's very important to light up what you're doing. So I hope you enjoyed. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, go down to the comment area, leave me any comments. If you want to learn anything about the LEDs or power supplies, leave a comment, and then perhaps I can make a video and show you. Thanks guys, have a good one.